Empire. Okay. Oh, flip. That's useful to know. I have to keep my hands out. I've got the window covered with a towel in an effort to try and stop my head glowing. Right, so welcome to Hedge Stuff, I guess is what
Matt
we
and
say.
Andy in the morning.
Yeah, that's getting old.
Oh, God, it will never get old.
I've continued to merch my cup. These are all test runs for actual merchandise I want to try and get us to put in the shop. I've added a little PD logo to the Hedge Stuff thing, because I think that could become a brand. And then on the reverse, I've put a March of Proverb, which seemed appropriate. And I think this could very easily be something that could fetch literally pennies on a merch store. Definitely hedge Stuff on the front, March Proverb on the back. It's
I actually do like the idea of a set of cups with March of Proverbs on them.
yeah, it's a license to print money.
A Rolling Stone, murders know your tune.
If we had a couple of if we put Hypno Hog on the front, then we would definitely have Marcher themed merchandise that literally 2 Marchers would be excited by and probably purchase. Anyway, one of the reasons I'm talking about Marchers is because we've been talking about the Marchers a lot.
We have,
this
yeah.
week.
That's been really exciting.
Do you want to talk about what we've been doing? You can talk about what you've been doing. You've been doing coding.
I've been doing lots of things, lots of little things. I was just, we might have to cut this bit, but I was just, I've just been writing an update for the moderators group, telling off all the moderators because they are refusing to take any time off, the bastards. And so we're having to try and beat them with sticks to make them take time off. Okay. So I've written a big update about why it's really important to take breaks from work, and why, professional organisations, people should take breaks and stuff. I mean, it is, it sounds comic, but actually it's a really weird challenge when you run an organisation with 350 volunteers, because de facto no one ever wants to take a break. And actually, at events and for the moderators between events, that's actually, if you're not careful, it's a really toxic culture. So we're always trying to find ways to force people to take breaks. So yeah, I've just been working on a little bit today, and also just updating them and saying, look, don't let people mess the moderators about. We should treat the moderators the same way they treat our refs at an event, basically. That they're not there to be argued with. If you've got a disagreement, there are proper channels, but yeah, don't argue with a ref at an event. Don't argue with a mod online. Just appreciate that they're doing a difficult job, and what have you. So that's what I did this afternoon. Did this morning. But the more exciting stuff, that's boring admin-y stuff. Then I was liaising with Ali, the site manager and the deputy site manager on the site, packing the site away. They're still there. They've been there for 2 weeks now. It's a big job. So there was lots of liaising with them around stuff. But again, that's the tedious. But the exciting stuff we've been doing is the marches.
Oh well, and Varushka slightly.
We've drifted into Varushka.
We started in Varushka. It was just easier to do Varushka, and then we got to the basically last a fortnight ago we did a poll saying which army pages should we work on next, and the winner by a country mile was the Iron Helms.
Much to our astonishment.
Much to our surprise. But we also both picked an army that we were interested in. Matt picked the one that he thought had the most interesting comment, which was the 7th Wave in Highguard, and I picked the one I wanted to do, which was the Drakes. So we started off with the Iron Helms, which was reasonably straightforward, actually. I think the only problem we really encountered writing up the Iron Helms was back to that problem of there being like way too much history. That we should have had a 200-year-old empire instead of a 400-year-old empire.
Mistakes to make.
But we dealt with that. The Iron Helms are much more interesting for the stuff that they've done since they were created by the players. I think in some ways, I was looking at the recent history section, and they've murdered in a horrific way using dogs and impaling posts all 3 of the of the barbarian enemies of the Empire in the space of 18 months, which I thought showed a real commitment to getting out there and ruthlessly terrorising the enemies of the Empire, which was quite nice.
Well and good being cruel, but if you can't be efficient and goal orientated while you're being cruel, what use is it?
But the one that and then we moved on to working on the drakes
targets.
And looking.
People need targets for the number of dead bodies on spikes. You see, if they're not hitting their targets, they're just not cruel enough.
They're definitely hitting their targets.
They're definitely hitting their targets. And well done to them. Well done to them.
Yes, I think they hit all their. I think they hit their targets for the year in one season in Spiral. To be honest. Anyway.
Yeah, it did.
But then we moved on to the drakes, which is where we've spent most of the last week. In fact, when we've been working.
We drove straight into a hole that was the March of History. We crashed our vehicle.
You're making that sound much worse than it is. Because obviously when we started off, we didn't actually want that much history. I think it's fair to say.
No,
we were much more focused on what the nations were going to be like on the field and what players were going to do in the game. So we specifically asked our writers to do a very light touch on the history, mostly focusing about where the nation came from and how it joined the Empire, because those were the two big ones, the two big key points we're interested in. And with the marches, that amounted to, they left Dawn, they went home and had a civil war. And those were basically the only two bits of history we had for the entire marches for 800, 900 years. And because the Drakes is an army that is innately tied into a specific historical character, which is Tom Drake, who is a key figure in that civil war I mentioned earlier, that line about a civil war. We took a look at the Marcher history, and every time we looked at a paragraph of the Marcher history, we ended up looking at the paragraphs to either side of it as well, and before you know it, we're sort of rejigging the whole Marcher history.
We are taking the writing apart and reworking in everything that's been discovered in play, and then presenting it as a much more detailed, in-depth study of the period, so that we can then lift out the bits that are relevant to the Drakes. And, not retconning anything, but we're just giving it a much more thorough treatment. It's
similar to what we did with Highguard a couple of years ago. We took a proper look at their history, expanded some areas, tied it in with some other pages and things, and gave them a much more fluid write-up, I think. And we're doing the same thing with the marches. We're expanding. The details haven't changed. They still march out of Dawn. They still have a civil war.
But it's really fun, actually, isn't it, to take these things and work them through, which is what we've really done. We've kind of gone, okay, well, how did that happen? What started it? Where did they go? Where did they go? Who could they get help from on the way? And just a million things about, well, where did they arrive? What happened when they arrived? And you to actually do anything more detailed than they left Dawn, they had a fight, they joined the Empire, you need to really kind of workshop through all the key events and the key people and the key moments and the key drives and get them we needed to get them absolutely clear in our own head. Otherwise you can't write anything down.
But of course, what we don't want to do is write 4,000 words on this stuff and slap it onto a wiki page that is part of, even though it's not part of the core reading, is still part of the basic Marcher brief. So we're having to summarize as much as possible and use one sentence instead of 5, which is really painful. Because if something's worth saying, it's worth saying it in lots and lots of words. Anyway, and also, of course, we've had to look at the big green leafy elephant in the room.
Is that the Valon?
It's Meowren. It's Meowren. Yeah, I was writing about this recently, actually, but one of the things that always causes a little bit of excitement is when we designed the game, we had 2 separate teams. Basically, one very small team working on the map and 4 or 5 other teams working on the nation write-ups. And we had a really, really small team of people whose job it was to liaise between those 2 teams. And was
that me and you, Ralph?
That was me and you. And to be fair, at the risk of being demonetised, we fucked that up quite royally. And it was halfway through year 1, I think, before we noticed that there was no border between the marches and Dawn. despite the fact that the history, and indeed one plot, or at least that was being run at the time, talked about the border, about the battles across the border, and between Dawn and the Marches there is Mearan, that until about the halfway through the 2nd century of the Empire is full of Alon. So it was all a bit exciting, frankly. So we spent more brain hours than we should have done, trying to work out how we can make all of that make sense without having to retcon anything, or my personal favourite plan, move Mearan to a small island in the Bay of Catazar.
Sinkhole, that solves all known problems.
It could get bigger, but then it would have to get bigger backwards in time as well. And while I'm not opposed to that, time travel is usually a bad sign for a franchise, I've got to say.
It's where you jump the shark, isn't it?
Yeah. And to be honest, it's one of the things that's been putting me off finishing off the Mearan territory writer, but now I have no excuse. So the Drakes has basically been a piece of work that has slowly but surely expanded to become 3 or 4 other pieces of work. And that's the wiki bit we've been working on. I expect the 7th wave will be a doddle in comparison.
Super easy, barely an inconvenience at
Wow.
all.
Yeah, so that's what we've been working on. You've been doing other stuff as well, but that's mostly what I've been working on.
I've been coding. I paired with a fellow coder called Alex, and we made a toggle go backwards and forwards, and it was very exciting. If you're a coder, that's tremendously exciting.
Really?
A little HTML switch that goes backwards and forwards.
Look,
it makes me happy.
I'm feeling a lot better about how I've wasted my week now.
And then I fixed that awful CSS error on
that
the wiki,
awful CSS wiki error. That's the one I'm excited about. Previously, whenever we had a bulleted list next to a picture, we had to put the picture on the right of the screen, because if it was on the left of the screen, the bullets would appear inside the picture. And Matt, after 9 years roughly of working on a wiki, has fixed that.
Yes, as part of my current thing of overhauling the website, as part of the team that is working on that, I bought a new book on CSS, because normal coders just go on Google and Google whatever it is they need to know, but I learnt to code before there was Google, so whenever I need to learn anything, I just go and buy a book on it and read it. So I'm currently working through 800 pages of Eric Meyer's definitive guide to CSS. I got halfway through, and lo and behold, what did I find? The exact property I needed to fix that annoying bug on the wiki. And I was like, it's not all been worthless. So away I went and fixed it.
So
much fun.
That's what we've been doing.
It is.
So what I thought we'd do is we asked the community for a bunch of questions, with a plan about doing a number of short videos on a Wednesday, which for various reasons have proved to be like getting ritualists together to do rituals. Sorry, herding cats. So instead, we can do one of them now that is more relevant to those of us on this call than to the game team as a whole. And it's a question from Luca DeRay. Over the years, one of the holy grails of Empire and PD has been to get a permanent site. Obviously, current events have probably delayed this. Once again, 2 seconds, I'm just going to look at the camera in a sort of office way. But when it does eventually happen, what would it mean for the game in your view? How would it be used by PD? What options would it make for the players? And how would it improve the game? Obviously, I have many, many thoughts on that. But before I go, Matt, why don't you talk?
How long have I got?
About 10
permanent
minutes.
Site is the holy grail. So, first of all, what would we use it for? Well, obviously we would use it for Empire, and there would be a significant part of the site would be constructed to serve the game. So you'd be looking ideally at a central anvil that had permanent fixtures, buildings, a synod, a senate, a tavern, and we have some of those things now, but of course they're not permanent. They don't have anything like the qualities of a permanent structure. It would be lovely to go into the forge at Anvil and see a big roaring wood fire burning in the hearth. You can't just do that when your building's made of wood. So getting if we can really get a good site, and getting a good site in those terms is a site where we can get the kind of planning that we would need to build these things, because and this is really important, you can't just, as everybody understands, when it's houses or factories, you can't just buy a piece of land and build anything you like. But people tend to imagine if it's the live role playing, they'll just let you build anything, and I can assure you that's not how that works. But if we could
Oh,
get the right planning.
do you have some opinions on planning permission?
I do have some opinions on planning permission, which you've assured me I'm not allowed to rant
You're
about.
not allowed to rant about. I will edit them out. Just a second. Let me grab my little orange
Yeah.
thing to edit out. Right, okay. So you've
See, I've
rejoined
been
us after Matt
timed.
has spent 10 minutes talking about the planning permission process in Britain today. That would
And
be
how
available
challenging.
as a DVD extra, I think.
DVD extra.
Anyway, we were talking about buildings. Go on.
So yeah, so it'd be stupendous to get permanent buildings, and that's and actually when you talk to LARPers, that's kind of how you think. You think, yeah, permanent site, that'd be great. We'd have permanent structures, and that would be great. That would just be fantastic. But actually, that's really only the tip of the iceberg in terms of it. You know, just from my perspective, being able to have really good quality hygiene facilities, toilets and showers would be a massive
There is
boon.
nothing more vital to the production of good LARP than nice toilets.
It is really
Arguably.
crucial. It would be great to be able to do the administration and the monster from a physical building that was dry and warm. You know, all of these things would actually pay dividends in terms of improving the quality of
Well,
the game that we produce.
just having the boxes that we've got at the moment, the what are they, modified, not packing crates,
Cargo container buildings.
containers, modified containers. That
Yeah,
has made a major change to our ability to actually get stuff done.
yeah,
More
it
of
has
those would be just brilliant.
improved the working conditions no end. But then you start to hit on something that's very interesting. So you think about storage. At the moment, we can't really store player kit on site. There's a tiny amount of things that get stored on site. Some stuff gets left in the woods, but it's really we have to keep a really tight lid on it because otherwise it would just be everywhere, and then it would be a disaster. Trust me, because we'd be drowning in people's stuff. Nobody would know what, and that would be a nightmare. If we had a site, we could buy cargo containers, stack them up on site, lease them to players for a sensible fee that is in everybody's interests, and suddenly go, oh yeah, this half of this cargo container is yours. Just store all your kit here between events.
And it's
That had a
obvious. Sorry, go on.
go on.
I was going to say, it's obvious to see how good that would be for any game that's running on the site, because at the minute, a player's ability to decorate their own nation counts, for example, is heavily limited by the fact that everything has to be taken away at the end of the event.
Yeah, I would love to have 5 cargo containers split in half and say to each of the nations, right, you've each got a half a cargo container, the storing, set dressing for the nation, for your camp, national set dressing, the fire pits, all the sort of stuff. There's your half a cargo container. Put it all in there, and that would just raise the quality of the game. It would make the game easier to play and raise the quality of the game by make the logistics easier and let people have better stuff. It'd be great to have roads and be able to get around the site and good drainage. People perhaps not aware, but we spent, I think it was about £11,000, 15,000. It was a shitload of money. That's a technical term. Putting a massive land drain in through the middle of the field, the main field, the original Anvil field, and people don't appreciate, but it made a huge difference. The field drains vastly better. It is far less muddy than the first year when we turned up there.
Sorry, flashbacks.
Yeah, flashbacks. So just being able to have a really well drained site, all of and then have pathways that were permanent pathways. So even when it was wet, you could still be walking on the pathways. It wouldn't, churn up and get bogged down. So start to think about what a site would look like if it was actually adapted for use as a live role-playing site. How would you create that? How would you support it? And what would that do? And the knock-on would be it would have a huge impact on the game. I think it'd be really interesting around battles and particularly skirmishes. We'd be able to create more permanent sets, particularly if we had a big enough battle or skirmish area. We would be able to create set aside points in the battle area and create a fort, and we've done that now, but we're at the boundaries of what can be done on a temporary site. But also you could start to landscape. Years ago we looked at taking an ex-golf course as a permanent site. You think, God, that sounds terrible, because what do golf courses have? They have gentle rises that block lines of sight and little copses of trees and features, and actually just being able to come in and take a field and put a rise in it just so that maybe you can't just see all the way across it. We could start to landscape it in a ways that would make the battles more interesting. Nobody wants a vertical incline, but actually just giving physical dimensions and breaking up the lines of sight would be awesome.
I still miss having trees on the field.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Like we had a maelstrom, being able to. I wouldn't want to go back to copses necessarily because we're just too big for that sort of thing. But the fields at the end of the day are very big, flat, green, open areas.
Yeah, it would be lovely to have tree-lined aisles.
Or somewhere to hang lanterns, have some in-character lighting again. That would also be. I mean, it's a minor thing in the great scale of having a site again, but having some reliable in-character lighting again would be lovely.
So, but then you think, okay, so we're on their site permanently. So the next thing you want is a workshop. You want somewhere with all the equipment and tools that we would need to be able to create stuff for live role playing, props, making new tent poles, repairing canvas. The list is actually endless, but a really well-equipped workshop that was tailored to what we needed in live role playing would be a huge asset before, during, and after an event.
We have a couple of red caps who basically stay on active as red caps through the event now, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Having
a whole team of them.
Yeah, having them have a workshop to be working out of will be another game changer.
Yeah, but also think about things like the wiki and that team. They create props at the event. If they had a decent workshop rather than a makeshift tent, they'd be their skills would be unleashed. So and then you think about, okay, go back to your kind of your practicals. If we had a good site, we could start to really invest in accessibility stuff. We're constantly frustrated at the moment because it's so difficult to deal with this stuff in a field and on a temporary site. But if you set out from the ground up, you'd be like, right, there will be, there'll never be a building with a step in it, because we know that we don't want that. Everything will be, every path will need to be designed and built with the idea that somebody can get around it in a wheelchair in bad weather. The toilets, the hygiene facilities, everything can be built from the outset with an accessibility point of view. And I think that'd be fantastic, because we can really help to make the hobby more accessible if we can have a site that, and with the best one in the world, scout camps. I'll never forget going to one scout camp, and they were very proud of their disabled toilet that they put in, and in the entrance to the toilet is a 3-inch wooden door jamb that you've got to step over to get into the disabled toilet, and you're just staring at this 3-inch block in the way of any potential wheelchair and just thinking, and this is your disabled toilet. And that's not a criticism of them. They're trying to retrofit. At the point
Sure, but starting from the ground up, as you say, is much easier and much less hassle.
Easier. And you can physically make the changes to the site that you would need to try and get accessibility. And I think it would be so good, because at the moment it's so hard and so expensive to be fighting that path all the time that it's wearing to feel like you're never really achieving anything, you're never really making any steps forward. And then that kind of brings me to the last point, which is, we would be using this site 4 times a year. That's 48 weekends a year. It's not doing anything, and it's 44 weeks a year that it's not doing anything. So the question is, the first thing you'd want to do is be like, right, well, we want to lease it out to other LARP groups. Why would you build a permanent dedicated LARP site and then go, oh, no one can use it? That's nuts. Absolutely, we would want to be open for business and getting other LARP groups in to use the site. And that's where stuff like storage on site would become invaluable. Because if you're a small LARP group, and you can store your kit on site that you use for running your event or whatever. Suddenly all of these things start to come together. If you've rented a site but it's got a workshop and you can go and fix the X that you need for your event, all of these things would come together in a really powerful way. And if we've improved the accessibility for our events, then you get all that for free when you run your event there. It's the potential upsides, if we can get it right, are enormous, I think. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And then of course there's between the weekends, and there's lots of exciting things there. Can we create kind of educational LARPs for schools? And that's all pie in the sky stuff. But if we've got a site that is sat idle from Tuesday to Thursday for 44 weeks of the year, bet your boots we're going to want to find ways to use it. And we ran a fantastic. We didn't run. I hosted. Some friends of mine ran an amazing educational
Is
LARP.
that War of Roses?
Yeah, and I was only on the
Game of
outside
Roses.
looking in, but it was amazing. From my perspective, it just looked incredible. I was in awe. The kids seemed to really enjoy it. And I look at it and I could just see like what an amazing way to be able to deliver a unique experience. Get these kids in and go, right, you're playing this character from War of the Roses. Here's your brief. What better way to learn about the key figures of the War of the Roses than to be one for 3 hours or whatever. So yeah, I would love to have a permanent site and be in a position where we could start to do that. Obviously stuff like tent rental, equipment rental, radio rentals, all of the stuff that we own to run our LARPs on a permanent site with the right facilities set up the right way. We would then be up to go, oh yeah, well, you want to rent the site, that's XY. If you want to rent an in-character tent, that's that's this much.
I can certainly see how it's much easier to say you can have the radios for your LARP, but you need to put them back in this box here at the end of the event, as compared to yes, you can borrow our radios, you need to bring them to the next event and they need to turn up on the Wednesday.
Exactly. The difference between having a site manager going, right, you've booked X, Y, Z, you've booked 40 radios, here are you. Yeah, no, we've got a premises license, you've got 16 channels of full whatever. Here are your box of the 40 radios you've ordered. There's a 25 quid deposit or whatever, a 10 quid deposit if you lose one. And we could, at the point where they're just being handed back at the end of the weekend, that becomes viable in a way that it really isn't at the moment when things have got to move off site. And so I think, renting the kind of equipment that would help LARP organisers run events would be just a value added. And then also, potentially I want to be able to rent things directly to players. We do that now with our tents, but again, that is difficult because storage is problematic and so on. Once we had a permanent site, we'd want to invest more in that and have a whole suite of tents. But if we got our stuff right, if you were going to some, if another LARP system is running on our site for the weekend, and you think, yeah, great, but I want to take advantage of PD's tent hire policy. I'll just book a tent from PD, and it'll be up at my event. I'll roll into my tent, put all my stuff there, and then go away again at the end of the weekend, and the tent will get taken down. And I think that.
Sorry.
Go on.
I was just saying anything that can make camping less of a horror show is going to improve LARP for a lot of people.
It is going to, yeah, but actually there's a real beauty about that model I've just outlined, which is really quite subtle, which is that the people who've got money, LARPers tend to split into people who've got well-paid jobs and a short time, and people who are students and unemployed who are terribly short of money and have more spare time. It's not a perfect picture, but there's 30% in one of those brackets and 30% of LARPers in the other bracket. The point is that for the students and the unemployed, you want live role-playing to be as cheap as you can possibly get it so that it remains accessible. Well, actually, there's various ways to do that. But if you're in an environment in which the people who are time limited can go, yeah, I'm coming to this event, but I'm going to pay PD an extra £100, so there's a tent erected, and I can just roll up, throw my stuff in it for the weekend, and then leave it at the end of the weekend. That's a real asset to someone who is time short and well paid. But actually, if the economics is right, that's an asset to the student, because effectively some money has got to be earned for the whole thing to make sense. If we've got a site, there's a mortgage that's got to be paid, or whatever. If you get the people with lots of money to pay more for the event, then effectively the whole price of the event comes down. So the cost potentially is cheaper to the students and the unemployed. Sure, they don't get a nice tent to put in. They've got to lug their tent to the event and put it up themselves and take it down themselves. But they're money short, time rich. By basically delivering different services to each other, you can effectively reduce the price of the site rental to the LARP group, and hopefully they can pass that on to their players in keeping their ticket prices low.
And more live role playing is good for everybody.
And more live role playing is good for everybody, absolutely. So yeah, if we had our own site, if there's just so many things I would love to be able to offer the PD online platform to event organisers to sell tickets through, and just be like, yeah, there's a complete IT solution. It sells you tickets, it prints your gate lists, it does everything you want, bish bosh bosh, 50p a ticket, and we'll handle all your payments, whatever. There's effectively, PD has built an entire suite of services that we use to run 4 events a year. And all of that IT infrastructure is there, all of that event infrastructure is there on a massive scale. If we had a permanent site, we could start to create it so that other LARP organisers could tag into it. And that my holy grail is not a permanent site. The holy grail is, if you had a permanent site, how can you use that to benefit the whole hobby? How can you create better events that are easier for event organisers to run? How do you make it? Because actually, most people who get into event organising, in my experience, get in because they've got a cool idea for a game and they've got a cool idea for some plot they run. Very few people have got a really cool idea for how they're going to hire their radios, or a really cool idea for how they're going to handle disabled toilets. That's not what people get into
I have
LARP
to say,
for.
what stopped me running a lot of LARP in my younger days was toilets.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. All of these logistics puts people off running events. And effectively, if we can offer a really high quality service to the whole hobby, where it's just a la carte, I want that for my event, we can make event running easier for the whole hobby. And I really, if we can do that, I think we'll get more events, we'll get new people running events, we'll get, and that will make the hobby better for everyone, and that would be awesome. So that's my holy grail.
What's your holy grail? Cool.
All I need is a cool £1,000,000.
What's that?
All I need is a cool £1,000,000,
All right, okay.
And I've got a fiver, £5 in pound coins on the bookcase behind me, so I'm well on my way.
I found a £5 note in the top of my backpack the other day, and was there staring at it, thinking, I haven't looked at one of these in 6 months, 7 months. I can't remember the last time I actually used real money to pay for something.
Hey, you've got a fiver. I've got a fiver. We've literally doubled our money in 5 minutes. So that means by Tuesday, by the law of exponentials, we'll be able to afford the site.
Brilliant.
That's how it works.
We could end on that, or we could end on a fun question. I want to end on a fun question. We've sort of talked about.
Let's end on a fun question.
So let me just find Sophie Williams. That was it. The question from Sophie Williams. You're playing a brand new starting character at Anvil. Who are you, and what nation, and what do you do first to get stuck in? Now, do you need me to go through the nations, Matt?
No, I don't need you to go through the nations. Thank you very much. And notice, why am I answering this question? Why are you not answering?
Oh, because I've got an easy answer for this question. I have a character all ready to go in my head. I'm a League newspaper guy who publishes a small newspaper, but that is just a cover for me to loudly ask people questions, preferably senators. My plan would be to lurk outside. My first thing I'm going to do is on Friday night, I'm going to lurk outside the Senate and the Military Council. And as various people with titles come out, I'm going to shout outrageous questions at them in an attempt to trip them up and get them to say something scandalous. Then I'm going to write it down. I'm going to publish it. And that is my plan. My aim is to hopefully become either, what's his name? Hearst. Not Patty Hearst, the other one. From the movie, you know, the one, Rosebud. Anyway, to become a newspaper magnate and eventually be assassinated for uncovering something. That's what I want to do. I might have a soapbox as well and talk loudly about the need for senatorial reform. So that's the character I'm playing. What about you, Matt?
Right, yeah. So I thought of a character I'm going to play.
Go on
then. So the first thing I'm going to do, because I'm a bit of the meta gamer, is I'm going to speak to the community and find which of the nations is small and poorly organised. There's a basic rule of LARP, which is that it's the smaller the pond, the easier it is to make a splash in it. So much as I like Wintermark, there's 550 players in Wintermark, so I would be like, I'm just going to be a small fish in a huge pond, so I wouldn't go there. So I would look at either the Imperial Orcs, Urizen, or Varushka. Then I'd look at who was playing there, might look at a group, because I always find that if you're in for me, I go to live role-playing, particularly Fest, for the group dynamic. So I'd want to recruit a bunch of my friends and we'd want to come up with a good, solid group concept. I'm always more interested in group concepts than I am in player concepts. So I'm going to think, yeah, okay, I'm going to be Varushkan. Because the background really appeals. It's a fairly small nation. So it's going to be easy to sort of muscle in and start making waves and trying to get somewhere and get into the politics of it. You're not going to be locked out by the fact there's 400 players established already. So I'd look for a group. I'd look at the background and be like, okay, Varushka's straight away. It's appealing to me because there's a kind of dark element to it. You're not playing the heroes, but you're not playing the villain. But you are playing, I think, what are often called anti-heroes. You're playing people who do bad things to achieve noble goals. You're playing people who are prepared to think the unthinkable in pursuit of their goals. And actually, straight away, I've got a concept for the group. I've got a concept for the character. There you go. We're going to think the unthinkable in pursuit of our goals. And actually, so you go, right, okay, so we're going to be pretty bad people. So we're going to be absolutely Empire and Varushkan loyalists to the core, very lawful. There's no point in playing a criminal. That's just a dull character to me. It wouldn't appeal to me at all. I want to play someone who is absolutely 100%, a real patriot, but someone who's prepared to do some quite unpleasant things to advance Varushka in the nation. And then I think, okay, what game am I going to go for? And I think, just thinking about it now, and this was literally just the first thought that came into my head, I think I would want to be Cardinal Richelieu. That kind of sort of steepling your fingers, machinating cardinal.
So in Varushka, a wise one of some sort, maybe kicking
a
into
wise
the game.
one. Yes.
A puppet boyar to be the front
could
person.
Also play it as a Volhov. Volhovs have that kind of theme of poking their nose into other people's business. A cardinal that's trying to be the cardinal of vigilance, or the gatekeeper, or the inquisitor, or the anything. It doesn't really matter what hat you get. Just, all you need is a shred of authority to start sticking your nose into other people's business.
Advisor in senatorial affairs. No, auditor of senatorial affairs.
Goodness.
You could do a lot of damage with that.
What wouldn't I give to have that title? That is the most powerful title in the game. If you had that title, you'd be like demanding to know of every senator where every ring had gone, require, and then, I'd be like agitating that I need an address. You've got to get this and the auditor on senatorial affairs needs to be able to address the Senate, so I can provide regular reports on corruption in the empire. My head would be fizzing with ideas straight away. Yeah, you're right. The auditor of senatorial affairs would be amazing, and it's fascinating because on the face of it, that's not a powerful title. It doesn't have any great legal powers, but it comes with a whiff of authority that you have a right to do something and poke your nose into other people's business, and that is the pick you need to get into the crack of getting involved in the game and having opinions. Yeah, and that would be it. And that's where I would start out. I would be a Volhov, a Varushkan Volhov, in a group whose motto is to think the unthinkable. And I would be looking to get involved in maybe I've picked vigilance, and I want to ensure there's no corruption in the Empire as ruthlessly and as offensively as possible. Or maybe it's ambition, and I want to see the Empire crush the Thule like the dogs they are.
I look forward to some investigative journalism in which I can uncover your group's terrible plans and then have a race against time to publish it before something terrible happens. So, good stuff. Anyway, I think we're more or less out of time.
That was fun.
Been a fun chat.
Thank you. That was a great question.
We've got plenty more questions as well, which we can answer over the next couple. Is there anything else we want to finish on? I always find the ending tricky.
We should try that challenge every time we do one of these podcasts to come up with a cool character concept.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. There's a few more variations on that question as well that were asked on the Facebook thread. But we could just. But you're right. Yes, it is quite fun. Just
such a great question. It's actually such a great question, and without trying to criticise, if you're the game organizer and somebody puts that question to you and you can't come up with an exciting character you want to play in your game, maybe something's not right.
No, quite, because the point of the game is for players to play it.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, a good game offers a million different things. Not a million, but offers great.
Lots of different stuff. Within we built it with the hope that even within a single nation, there's 4 or 5 different ways different things to get involved in, different threads going on, different concepts, what have you.
Yeah, and you could, you created that character as a wise one. I was like, I could be a Volhov. You could do it as a boyar. You could do it as a wagon raider. You could, could do it as a brotherhood. What are they called? The
Warden Fellowship.
Warden Fellowship. And each time you do that, actually, it takes on a slightly different take.
Yeah.
If you're a Warden Fellowship, you're probably looking to go on skirmishes and drive forward the Russian agendas and ensure that, people are kept safe and so forth. If you're a Boyar, you're probably looking for political power and so on. Wise ones, Volhods, are much more about influence. They suit that kind of Cardinal Richelieu power behind the throne. But a Boyar wants to be on the throne. And that's See, but that
we can do at least another 9 of these without repeating ourselves as well. So
totally.
So that's like 9 months.
Obviously, at the point where we try it and then can't come up with anything, we'll have to cut that bit out.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Right, cool. So I think then we should say good evening. We should wave at the screen. Bye-bye, and I will cut it there. Hi there. If you enjoyed that video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and maybe click subscribe if you want to get advance warning of when we're doing more videos. Plan is to try and do at least one video every couple of weeks over the winter period to keep everybody's spirits up. I should also suggest to you that if you're interested in hearing more about Empire, you might want to hunt us out on Twitter or on Instagram, the links to which should be in the description.